So again, we are going to be recording tonight's meeting, just so everyone knows that, so that those folks who couldn't join us this evening will be able to watch, or you could watch later.
That's Nancy Kinner, the one who walks her dogs on our
Nancy Skinner
Kinner,
with those little dogs.
not the little dogs, the other.
Okay, well, yes. Hi, Peggy. Nancy Kinner here from Nubble Road, and I have a Springer Spaniel who's going blind and a little Corgi who's helping him. So let's start off then. My name is Nancy Kinner, and I am on the Conservation Commission in Georgetown. I live on Nubble Road. And we on the Conservation Commission try to have a couple of programs every year from folks that I work with at NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And you might remember that a short while ago, we had a program on nurdles, those plastic pellets. And tonight we have a special program with a colleague of mine whose name is Emily Setzer. And Emily is based down in Mobile, Alabama, at what's called the Gulf of Mexico Disaster Response Center. So if there's a big disaster in the Gulf, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration sets up a command post there in Mobile. And it's an amazing facility if you ever get down there to see it. It's just a whole wall of screens and all sorts of very sophisticated communications that can operate in a major hurricane, a tornado, all sorts of things. So Emily is here tonight. She's actually in Seattle tonight, but she is going to talk about something that I think you all might benefit from hearing. And this is about preparedness for storms, for disasters. As you know, more and more we are getting big storms like hit Georgetown, the two back-to-back storms last year or last winter. And so we thought that this program might be particularly beneficial. And I heard Emily, who's an expert on disaster preparedness, she's a member of the NOAA Disaster Preparedness Program, that you would benefit from hearing this wonderful talk she gave at our Hurricane Summit last spring. So I'm not going to talk anymore. We'll turn this over to Emily, who is a meteorologist and also an expert in disaster preparedness, and she's going to get us all up to speed. So what we're going to do is Emily's going to present, and then we're going to have a time for questions. And if you do have a question, you can put it in the chat. Okay, you can put it in the chat, which should be at the bottom of your screen on Zoom. You can just click that little thing that says chat, and you can type away your question, and we will accumulate the questions and ask them at the end. And Emily is happy to answer them. So take it away, Emily, and thank you so much for taking time out of your trip to Seattle for work to do this talk.
All right, thanks, Nancy. I am very excited to be sharing this with you. I'm going to share my screen here. Can everyone see this?
Yep, we can see it. You're not in presenter view yet.
Oh, well, let's see.
There should be a little button down at the bottom that allows you to go to presenter view.
So, I am so used to Google. Is that
okay? Nope,
good?
Go try to go again where it goes up under your screen.
Okay.
Just like you did. Just do it like
yes.
Okay.
Let's try sharing your screen one more time.
Yeah, try sharing your screen. So there should be something that says share down there. Yep. Okay. Now, on the bottom of your actually there's a slideshow thing up at the top. So if you see where it says from the beginning, just click that and it should go to slideshow view. No? Well, Okay, it isn't doing that. All righty. Try
Let
down at
me-
the bottom. There's another setup for a slideshow down on the bottom of your screen for PowerPoint. It should be
Yes.
like a little square box.
Yes.
Perfect.
Did that work? Okay, great.
No, it didn't work. It's
oh,
not
no.
going.
Emily, I think you might be sharing the wrong screen. So if you go to screen share and advanced sharing options and see if you can share your other screen.
Excellent. I promise I know how to do other things, but Google has never been my thing.
No worries.
Yeah, so just share your main screen.
So just entire screen.
Yep.
Excellent. I can do that as well.
Okay, now click and then try going to, yes, perfect.
Does that
Great.
work? Okay, perfect.
Yes, perfect.
Great.
All right, take it away, Emily.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So sorry for those technical difficulties. My name is Emily Setzer, and I'm very excited to talk to you today about the value of preparedness. So I am the Disaster Preparedness Specialist for the Disaster Preparedness Program in the Office of Response and Restoration, which sits under the National Ocean Service Line Office within NOAA. I joined the team in 2023, and I currently work out of the Disaster Response Center in Mobile, Alabama. My background is actually in meteorology and emergency management. I got my bachelor's degree in meteorology from Mississippi State University. And then from there, I went on to work for a couple of television stations in Panama City, Florida, Waco, Texas, and then finally Richmond, Virginia. I am now working on getting my master's degree from Virginia Commonwealth University in Homeland Security and Emergency Management. And I have lived in the world of disasters and preparedness for a very long time. And I'm very excited to share all of this knowledge with you today. And that picture you see on the side of the screen is me with my dog. Again, I'm in Mobile, Alabama, so Mardi Gras is a big deal for us down here. I've tortured my dog with it this year. I think he kind of loved it. He's just pretending he doesn't, but you will hear more about him later in the presentation when we get to the pet preparedness section. He's kind of my little helper with that. So while preparedness is vital for everyone, most people aren't actually prepared. According to a study conducted by the CDC recently, only 39% of Americans have actually developed an emergency plan and then discussed it with their family. So that means that 61% of people in this country have not developed a plan for themselves or for their family. And this is a very troubling statistic, as disasters can happen at any time, as we know. And typically they do happen without warning. And I do hesitate to say the nice part of hurricanes, which is something in the Office of Response and Restoration, is you do have time to prepare for those, but you don't always have the luxury of a long time to prepare, as we saw with Hurricane Otis, which rapidly intensified into a Category 5 hurricane within 24 hours prior to landfall in Mexico. And that is something we are seeing more and more often with these hurricanes that are forming in the Gulf. So to ensure the best results, it is best to be prepared well ahead of time. Being prepared can save your life, your family's life, and your property. Don't be a part of the 61% of Americans who are caught unprepared in the face of a disaster. When the disaster happens, and it will, maybe not today or maybe not tomorrow, but one day you will find yourself facing a disaster of some sort. And if you don't have the supplies, an evacuation plan, or any other form of preparedness, you could find yourself in a very dangerous situation. Ideally, everyone should be prepared to survive on their own for about 2 weeks or about 14 days following a large-scale disaster. It is possible that it may take days or weeks for responders to reach you following a major disaster, so it is vital you are prepared and ready to survive on your own. By having enough supplies for this, you can ensure you and your family can survive if roads are impassable and no one can reach you. It will also help first responders, as you being self-sustaining will take some of the pressure off of them and allow them to prioritize any life-threatening situations that arise and help those who are the most vulnerable. Additionally, this level of preparedness will allow you to extend help to neighbors if needed. And what should you be prepared for? It is important to know that different disasters do typically happen in different parts of the region or different regions. We don't see the same hazards everywhere.
Can you hear?
Someone living in, let's say, the Northeast may face some very difficult hazards compared to someone living in the Pacific Northwest. So again, it is important to know and understand the different disasters your region may face and be prepared for anything. These can include natural disasters such as hurricanes, earthquakes, and tornadoes, and many, many more. Man-made disasters such as chemical explosions or terroristic acts. It's important to understand these hazards and be prepared for anything that could come your way. So for the sake of this presentation, I am going to focus primarily on natural hazards, but again, it is vital you are prepared for those man-made hazards, no matter where you live, as those are something that could happen to everybody. Everyone is at risk for those man-made hazards. If you reside in New England or the Mid-Atlantic, according to the Red Cross, you are at high risk of hurricanes and winter storms. To prepare for hurricanes, make sure you keep an emergency kit on hand. And in your vehicle, in case you get caught in a storm while on the road. That includes blankets, waters, non-perishable food items. You should also avoid driving, stay indoors, and dress in layers of lightweight, loose-fitting clothing to stay warm. If you reside in the South and Southeast, you have a few more hazards to worry about. You're at high risk of experiencing a tornado, landslide, earthquake. That's primarily in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Missouri. Quite a few states there. And of course, a hurricane. So to prepare for a tornado, it is important to know where the safest place in your home is, preferably a windowless interior space on the lowest floor. Remember to keep as many walls between you and the outside as possible. For landslides, learn about local evacuation plans. Talk to everyone in your household about what to do if a landslide happens. Practice makes perfect when preparing for an earthquake. Practice drop, cover, and hold on with everyone in your household. And finally, for hurricanes, keep that emergency kit on hand and create that evacuation plan. For the Midwest, you're at risk of tornadoes and earthquakes as well, but there's also a high risk of wildfires, particularly for the Dakotas. So to prepare for a wildfire, sign up for emergency notification systems that your community uses, be prepared to evacuate at a moment's notice, and keep an emergency kit in your car. You should also listen to local radio and television for the latest on safe evacuation routes. In the West, you are at high risk for earthquakes and wildfires and should prepare the same way. You are also at risk for winter storms. So remember, this is when you want to keep that emergency kit in your vehicle and avoid the roadways. And finally, we have the Western Pacific region, which is at high risk for several different things, some of which we have already covered, such as earthquakes, wildfires, hurricanes, particularly in Hawaii, but California did see a post-tropical storm Hillary in 2023, so that's not entirely out of the possibility, and landslides. Additionally, this region is at high risk of tsunamis and volcanic activity. To prepare for a potential tsunami, plan evacuation routes from home, work, school, and other places you may frequently go. Try to pick a safe place about 2 miles inland or 100 feet above sea level. And for volcanic activity, keep a dust mask and goggles on hand for every member of your family, and talk about your plans so everyone knows what to do in case of an eruption. My mother did actually grow up in Southern Oregon and remembers the ashfall from Mount St. Helens in 1980. So these eruptions are rare, but they do happen. So it is important to be prepared for these situations. Now let's get a little bit more hyper-local. Georgetown, Maine is located, and forgive me, I'm going to say this wrong, Sagadahoc County. I meant to look that up a little earlier, near the Kennebec River. Sagadahoc. Oh, I was kind of sort of close. My apologies. Near the Kennebec River with a population of a little more than 1,042 people. State Route 127 is the only highway access into town, and there is no rail service, and there is a volunteer on-call fire and rescue department. All of this information is vital to know when you are planning to be prepared. So I've actually taken a look at the Georgetown, Maine Emergency Management Plan. So we're going to talk a little bit about that here today, which does list out the likely threats to the town. As for natural hazards, Georgetown faces about 6 main threats, and it's important to be prepared for all hazards. But these hazards Georgetown has identified are the biggest threats that they believe may affect the town. First, Georgetown is at risk of winter storms. These are common in Georgetown, but these storms have the potential to cause emergencies such as major power outages. Wildfires are possible in the forested area of town, typically in the late summer and early fall. We also have windstorms that are possible, such as severe storms or even hurricanes, and floods are possible from spring thaws and ice breakups, which can cause lowland flooding, or from the summer or fall storms that may cause major flooding. And then droughts are possible in the late summer where local springs and well levels have actually reduced. Finally, Georgetown is in a moderate earthquake zone, actually making earthquakes possible. So that's a wide variety of natural hazards that you guys are at risk of. As for disasters caused by people, there are 5 main threats that were identified by Georgetown. The first is a national emergency, such as a possible attack by a foreign interest, which could cause disruptions in the supply chain, which would severely impact the town. Hazardous materials, where fuels are most likely to create a problem. Radiological emergencies, which are possible from vehicles traveling on State Route 127. Aircraft crashes, which are possible anywhere in the state of Maine, from small private planes and military aircraft, which again are common in the Georgetown Maine airspace. And then shortages are a threat to Georgetown as well. Like I mentioned, Georgetown depends on out-of-state resources, and disruptions in normal deliveries could actually cause a major chain of problems. So again, power outages are a major problem and can be caused by a number of threats to Georgetown that I just previously mentioned. The emergency management plan does suggest contacting Maine Central Power if you do find yourself in the dark. I've included the number on the slide here, and you can also find that online as well. Additionally, it is a good idea to keep one or more coolers on hand in case of an extended power outage, ice, a non-cordless telephone to contact others, flashlights, and batteries. And we will talk more about emergency supplies later in this presentation. So if you have an emergency generator, again, big in power outages, but they can be dangerous. Make sure you place that generator outdoors in fresh air. Keep it at least 15 feet away from your home windows or doors, and keep it dry, which is very important, and protected from ice and even snow. And finally, make sure your hands are dry before touching the generator. So how should you be prepared? Well, first and foremost, you need to make a plan and discuss it with anyone else who may live in your household. If you don't know where to start, here are a couple of tips. First, put the plan together by asking yourself and anyone else in your household these questions. How will you receive emergency alerts and warnings? What is your shelter plan? What is your family and/or household communication plan? And do you need to update your emergency preparedness kit? The next step is to consider the specific needs in your household. Tailor your plans and supplies to specific daily needs and responsibilities within your household. Don't forget to plan for the care of any children in your home if necessary. Make sure you create a plan for your pets if you have any of them, and then also consider any dietary or medical restrictions. Step 3 is to create a family emergency plan for everyone in your home. Write down any emergency contacts, such as phone numbers and addresses. Consider what your emergency meeting place or places would be if your family is separated in the case of a disaster, and make sure to discuss this plan with your family and anyone else in your household. It's also a good rule of thumb to update this plan at least once a year. And then finally, step 4 in making a plan is practicing it. Include your family or household in practicing it. And it's also important to practice it with everyone to ensure they understand the plan in its entirety. The next step to preparedness is having enough emergency supplies to get you through an emergency. Again, having enough supplies to last you and your family 2 weeks is, of course, the ideal situation. So for your basic emergency supplies, it's important you have enough water to last you and your family about 2 weeks. It's recommended you have 1 gallon per person per day stored away for emergencies. Food for 2 weeks for each person. Have a radio. This can be battery powered or hand cranked, but if you have a battery powered radio, make sure you include extra batteries in your supply. A flashlight, a first aid kit for medications, a whistle to signal for help, sanitation items and personal hygiene items, a multi-purpose tool, and a can opener. You can't eat that canned food if you don't have the can opener, and copies of personal documents that include contact information, cell phones and cell phone chargers, blankets, and maps of the area. Also, make sure you have emergency cash included in your basic emergency supplies. Oftentimes, you are unable to use a card following disasters, and you will need to use cash to obtain anything you may need. This is often overlooked. For your additional supply items, these are items that can be tailored to you and your family's personal needs, but some examples would be identification cards. So for example, if you are a NOAA employee, such as me, I would need my emergency identification or my NOAA identification card in the case of an emergency, or an extra pair of prescription glasses. Again, I'm wearing glasses. I'm completely blind without them. If I found myself in an emergency and I didn't have these, and I didn't have an extra pair, I would be completely blind and I would be in a very bad situation. Infant formula and diapers if you have a baby, and then pet food and water for your pet or pets, a change of clothing for everyone, a fire extinguisher, a lighter, toilet paper, plastic bags, paper and pencil, games, and other entertainment activities, and any communication equipment that you may need. I could go on and on about this, but it's also a good idea to have some comfort foods in your emergency supply stash. You can absolutely survive on canned food, but it might be nice to throw in a little treat here or there just to get you through that emergency. And it's also important for you to document and insure your property before a disaster strikes. Once the disaster happens, it's already too late. So you can keep these records among your emergency supplies in water and a fireproof box or safe to make sure nothing happens to these documents. Another good rule of thumb, if you are evacuating, is to bring proof of residence with you. This can be your lease or a copy of it or some kind of bill like an electric bill. And there are times where you need more than one proof of residence to get back into a disaster zone. So it is better safe than sorry. Having multiple ways to receive alerts or warnings is also vital for preparedness. It can make all the difference on knowing when and how to take action. So for individuals and families, confirm your mobile device can receive wireless emergency alerts. And these will look like text messages, but have a unique sound and vibration that are designed to get your attention. They are not affected by network congestion and don't disrupt calls, texts, or in-progress data sessions. You're also not charged for receiving these alerts, and you do not need to subscribe to them as they are sent through FEMA's integrated public alert warning system. You can check these alerts through your wireless provider, and then to ensure that your mobile device is capable of this, you can also do that through your wireless provider. Older phones may not be capable of these alerts, and some models require you to enable them, and they may also be referred to as government alerts or emergency alert messages. Sign up for text and email alerts from your local jurisdiction, such as your Georgetown alerts if they have them, and often events that are held, or getting a NOAA weather radio is also a great idea. They often hold events to kind of program these by local television stations ahead of hurricane season or ahead of any other severe weather season. And then sign up for alerts for workplaces, schools, or other community organizations you will want to hear from in case of an emergency. Download any relevant hazard alerts and warning apps, and create a list for all alert systems available to you. So pet ownership in the United States has actually increased significantly over the past 30 years. In 2024, a study done by Forbes actually showed that 66% of US households, that's almost 87 million homes, own a pet. And that is a significant increase from the 56% of households that owned a pet in the late 1980s. And I would bet many of you listening today to this presentation have a pet, and I'm sure you would all agree with me that pets are a very important part of our families. This means that we need to include them in our preparedness plans, and it's very important to start thinking of those plans that include our four-legged friends early. So according to a national poll distributed by the ASPCA, in 2021, 83% of polled pet owners reported living in a community threatened by natural disasters. Only 46% of those who were polled had an actual preparedness plan in place for themselves and their animals. More than 1 in 5 of those pet owners had to evacuate their home due to a disaster, and half of those who evacuated had to leave a pet behind. 44% of the people who refused to evacuate for Hurricane Katrina did so because they refused to leave their pet behind. In the end, some of these pet owners actually had to be threatened with arrest before they were convinced to evacuate their flooded homes, and then still ended up having to leave their animals behind. These numbers are extremely alarming. Almost half of the pet owners who left their pets behind cited not having enough time when the disaster struck, further emphasizing the need for better pet preparedness. The reality is that a disaster can strike at any time, and it's vital to be as prepared as possible to survive with our pets. So where should you get started getting your pets prepared? Well, first, you need to make a plan, which is very important. By making a plan, you will likely encounter less difficulty, stress, and worry when you need to make a decision during an emergency. Second, build a kit for your pet or pets. This will be a similar process to building an emergency supply kit for you and your family. You need to think about the basics for survival for your pet. It's also important that you review and update that kit regularly to ensure the contents are fresh. And then third, make sure you stay informed of the latest news and have multiple ways to receive alerts. So these pictures on the side of the screen, they are not just random pictures of animals. The one on the bottom is my dog Mortimer, and the one on the top is my hedgehog Leo. He's no longer with us, but he was a wonderful, wonderful pet. I had them both when I was living in Florida in 2018. And in 2018, we had Hurricane Michael come through, which was a very powerful Category 5 hurricane. It came right through the town that I was living in at the time, and I had to evacuate my pets. I was unable to go with them as I was working for a television station, but I had a plan in place to get them out of the county and out of the impact zone, ensuring that they would be okay while I was able to do my job. And that really helped me be able to do my job. That helped the pets be able to make it through the hurricane. And that was just such an important thing for me to do, to make that plan. I built an emergency supply kit, and then I stayed informed of everything that was going on in order to make sure my pets were safe. So I was able to do my job. So for your pet preparedness plan, there are several tips you can use to ensure your plan is at the best. Make sure you know what to do with your pet during an evacuation. Many public shelters and hotels don't allow pets inside, even during an emergency. Know a safe place where you can actually take your pets before disasters and emergencies happen. Often, counties will open a pet-friendly shelter during an emergency, but these shelters often have rules and regulations that will surround your pet. And typically, those pets must remain in a crate or carrier during this time. And developing a buddy system is another good idea for your plan. Plan with neighbors, friends, or relatives to make sure that someone is available to care for or evacuate your pet if you're unable to do so. It's also important that you keep copies of your pet's vaccination record and make sure your pet is microchipped. Keep your address and phone number up to date and include any emergency contact outside of your immediate area. Finally, it's a good idea to keep contact information for your local emergency management office or local animal shelters on hand, and that will allow you to find out where pet-friendly shelters are in the area during an emergency. And this is also helpful in the case that you become separated from your pet, which does typically happen in the aftermath of a disaster. Building a kit for your pet, as previously mentioned, is a similar process to building a kit for your family. Make sure to keep several days' supplies of food and water for your pet or pets. Keep the food in an airtight, waterproof container and have a water bowl to use. Keep an extra supply of medicine your pet takes on a regular basis in a waterproof container. Include other items that are appropriate for your pet's emergency medical needs. Have copies of your pet registration information in a waterproof container. It's also a good idea to keep additional copies electronically. If you're able to, it's also smart to get your pet microchipped. I know I've mentioned that a couple of times, but it's such a good idea to do that. If they were to be separated from you during a disaster, this will allow resources to be able to contact you with your pet's location. When collecting traveling bags or crates, make sure you have one for each pet in your household. Again, pet-friendly shelters will often turn you away if your pet is not in that carrier or crate. Pet shampoo and other items are important to keep on hand in case your pet needs to be cleaned up at any point during an emergency. And it's also a good idea to keep some kind of proof of ownership on you, such as a picture of you and your pet together. This will be helpful in the case you become separated from your pet. Again, a picture will help you document that ownership and allow others to assist you in identifying your pet. Additionally, sanitation items are a good idea to include in this kit, such as pet litter and trash bags. And if there is time, it's a good idea to include toys and treats to reduce any stress for your pet. So when I was sending my dog and my hedgehog away, I made sure they had all of their toys, all of their sanitation items, and everything that would be possible for them to survive for the potentially 2 weeks that they would be gone from the area. Now, if you have large animals, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, such as horses, goats, or pigs on your property. It is extremely important to be prepared before a disaster. So preparing with these larger animals is a bit unique, as you can't take them with you like you can a dog or a cat. And the GIF on the right of your screen, that little video that you see, that is an example of what we are trying to avoid. You need to ensure all animals have some form of identification. And this can be done in several ways. So for horses, a microchip, luggage tag in their tail or mane, clipper shaved information in the animal's hair, or permanent marker to mark the hooves are a good way to provide identification. If you or anyone you know has livestock, good forms of identification for them could be ear tags, a neck chain, or even a leg band. You should evacuate large animals early if at all possible. And you should have the primary and secondary routes mapped out in your preparedness plan in advance. Evacuation sites should also be planned out in advance, as these kinds of animals will not be able to go to a shelter. And these sites include veterinary or land-grant colleges, racetracks, showgrounds, stables, or fairgrounds. And there are several other possible sites that larger animals can be evacuated to, but it's important to have this information prepared ahead of time. If you can make sure the animals are familiar with being loaded into a trailer, that would be important to do ahead of time as well. And when the need for transporting large animals arises, make sure there are plenty of available vehicles and trailers needed for transporting and supporting each type of animal. There should also be experienced handlers and drivers available for that transportation. To do this, you may need to create a network through neighbors, local haulers, farmers, producers, or other transportation providers. Again, this must be done well ahead of time of the evacuation. Ensure the designated destinations have food, water, veterinary care, and handling equipment. And if you have multiple different types of large animals, you will need to ensure these destinations have proper supplies for all of them. Finally, evacuation is not always possible. If this is the reality that you are facing with your larger animals, you will need to decide whether it's better to move the animals into a barn or turn them loose outside. And that, of course, is a very difficult decision that you may need to make. This decision to leave your larger animals in the field or the barn should be based on the risks of injury resulting from the disaster and from the environment after the disaster. Factors to consider include the stability of the barn, the risk of flooding, and the amount of trees and debris in the field. So, for example, if you're at risk of a wildfire and you're unable to evacuate your larger animals, turning them loose into a pasture with the most distance between them and the fire line is going to be the best idea. But if you're faced with a tornado, securing animals in a sturdy barn is the better idea. And in that situation, if you are able, secure or remove all outdoor objects that could turn into flying debris. So staying informed is vital in these situations. Make sure you know and have multiple ways of receiving emergency alerts and warnings. Listen to local officials when you're told to evacuate, or even shelter in place. This is often when you will hear about those pet-friendly shelters as well. And additionally, always bring your pets indoors at the first sign or warning of a storm. So I also know that in the immediate moment after a disaster, after everything is passed through, things can feel very overwhelming. But it's important to take a deep breath and remember these steps to help your recovery go a bit smoother. So that picture that you see at the bottom there, that's me on October 11th, 2018. That's the day after Hurricane Michael went through my hometown at the time, Panama City, Florida, which was almost 6 years ago exactly. Again, Michael was a very devastating Category 5 hurricane that absolutely decimated the panhandle of Florida. So I have been here before, and after the presentation, if you do have any questions regarding navigating recovery or you just need to talk about it, you've been through something similar, I am, of course, available to talk about that as well. It's important to remember that recovery from a disaster is typically a gradual process, and your safety is the primary concern above all. And this presentation will offer some general advice to take after disaster strikes in order to get your home and community back to normal. So first, if you have any damages following a disaster, please contact your local emergency manager when you are able. Let officials know of any immediate assistance you may need. Local officials and voluntary organizations are typically your best option for immediate needs, such as food and shelter. And the pictures you're going to see in this part of the presentation are pictures I did take myself after Hurricane Michael. The picture on the bottom left, that's a house that had the roof and back completely ripped off. Debris was just everywhere. And the picture on the bottom right corner, that is actually the hospital in Panama City. They were completely destroyed. I think only one wing of the hospital was operational after the hurricane. And they just had all of their items and belongings just strewn into the street. So very devastating hurricane and a very hard recovery. If you have insurance, make sure you contact your insurance agent to file a claim. Make sure you document all your damages. So before you begin the cleanup process, take photos and make a list. Save all your receipts for post-damage repair and cleanup, and make sure you file a claim with your insurance company. And again, recovery is a gradual process and does not happen overnight, despite how much we would like it to. So make sure to take care of yourself and your family first. You should consider possible safety issues and monitor yours and your family's health and well-being. If you are returning home following a disaster, understand this can be physically and mentally challenging. And of course, use caution when doing so. And again, that house was a couple of houses down, a little farther down the street from that previous house that I showed you, had the complete side of the wall ripped out. There's no furniture in there. That had all flown out after Hurricane Michael. Another part of preparedness and recovery is the financial aspect. It can be very expensive to recover from a disaster, so it's important that you prepare for this aspect as well. Gather financial and critical and personal household and medical information prior to a disaster and store it in a safe place so you have access to that information quickly during the recovery. If you are able to put some money in emergency savings accounts that can be used in a crisis, it's also a good idea to keep cash in your home in a safe place, maybe with the financial and critical information, as ATMs and credit cards may not and most likely will not work after a disaster, and you may need to purchase supplies. The only way to do that would be with cash. Obtain property, health, and life insurance if you do not already have it. Remember that not all insurance policies are the same, and you may need to tailor the types of coverage you receive to your specific needs. Unfortunately, it's also not uncommon for scammers to take advantage of people during recovery processes or those who are just trying to donate to the disaster victims. According to the National Insurance Crime Bureau, it's estimated that almost $9 billion is lost each year to post-disaster fraud. Typical scams are fraudulent charities soliciting donations for disaster victims that often imitate the names of popular charities. Scammers impersonating government officials, offering disaster relief in exchange for money or personal information, and then scammers promoting non-existent businesses or investment opportunities related to disaster recovery, like rebuilding or flood-proofing. So after Hurricane Michael, there were several businesses, I use air quotes, offering tree removal services for exorbitant amount of monies, and then they just took that money and never removed the trees and were never seen from again. A pretty typical scam after hurricane. And price gouging for essential goods and services, such as paying $100 for maybe a few gallons of gas or water being extremely overpriced. And typically, scammers will insist you pay for services by wire transfer, gift card, payment app, cryptocurrency, or even in cash. Another common scam that is seen after a disaster is someone promising to help you qualify for relief from FEMA for free. Remember, FEMA will never require you to pay a fee to get disaster relief. Do not sign your insurance check over to anyone else, and be sure to research contractors and get estimates from people before signing someone to work. It's also a good idea to get a written contract for repairs and carefully review it before signing it. Be cautious about sharing any personal financial information, such as your bank account number, social security number, or credit card number with anyone. Do not click on links and texts or emails from people you don't know, as scammers do typically create fake links to websites to collect your information. And remember, the government will not call you or text you about owing money or receiving payments, and the government will also not contact you through social media about this either. It's also important to keep in mind that scammers may try to take advantage of your financial fears in the wake of a disaster. If you receive messages from anyone claiming to be a government agent and you feel it's a scam, please contact the Federal Trade Commission and report it. And again, if you have ever tried navigating the recovery aspect of a disaster through FEMA, while it is free, you may know that it can be very confusing. If you haven't, there are always several questions that arise in response to this process, and we're going to go through a couple of those here. To rectify those questions, over the past year, NOAA's Office of Response and Restoration's Disaster Preparedness Program, what I work under, and the Coastal Response and Research Center at the University of New Hampshire partnered with Louisiana Sea Grant to launch a series of resources to assist communities following natural disasters. So these resources, which include fact sheets, videos, and social media posts, aim to provide guidance on navigating federal disaster and aid programs. These fact sheets cover topics such as major disaster declaration processes, individual and housing assistance, and also debris removal. Additional fact sheet topics will be developed over the next year, and all those resources will be available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. This was originally created for Louisiana communities. These fact sheets are now going to be available for other states, and the content is designed to be easily adaptable across geographic regions and for the various disaster types we discussed here today. The team behind these resources we are going to share these products across NOAA and with external partners, including emergency managers, NGOs, government officials, and then eventually will be available for use for everyone. The goal for these resources is to have a broad impact to help communities know what type of aid is available and how to access and follow a disaster. And I can provide this information at the end of this meeting, or I can give the link to Nancy to provide to the rest of you if you are interested in this. Finally, we're going to talk about some safety issues that could arise in the wake of a disaster. Several new safety issues can be created by disasters, so be sure to watch out for washed out roads, contaminated buildings, contaminated electrical wiring, and even more. Walk carefully around the outside of your residence, check for loose power lines, gas leaks, and also structure damage. And if you are in doubt of your safety at any time, try to have your residence inspected by a qualified building inspector or even a structural engineer before entering, if you are able. So the pictures that you see on the right here, the top one, that is a middle school in Panama City that was completely blown apart by Hurricane Michael. Brick was everywhere. There was exposed wiring, glass. Very dangerous situation. Should not have been open to the public. The public should not have been entering it. Again, that did create a major safety issue. And the picture at the bottom is a tree that fell over and pulled up some underground wiring with it. And that wiring, again, very dangerous if you were to touch it. It was live and it was not cut yet. So these are just examples of some of the issues that do arise in the wake of a disaster. It's also important to watch out for animals during the cleanup process. It's not unheard of for snakes to actually be hiding among the debris. So try to use a stick to poke through the debris first. Do not enter your home if you smell gas. There are floodwaters around the building or authorities have not declared it safe to enter. And please do not walk through the floodwater if you can avoid it. They may contain hazardous substances, sharp objects, and other debris. Additionally, floodwater can actually contain raw sewage, industrial waste, gasoline, oil, and other chemicals, and it can contain pathogens that can cause severe illness. Finally, inform your local authorities as you can about health and safety issues, including those chemical spills, downed power lines, washed out roads, and the smoldering insulation. And then finally, a great way to determine the people's preparedness level is by issuing a survey. Every year, the Disaster Preparedness Program, me, distributes a personal preparedness survey to the Office of Response and Restoration staff. That survey is intended to assess OR&R staff personal preparedness levels and serve as a reminder for everyone to be prepared ahead of hurricane season, and additionally be prepared of all hazards. So the survey has a list of questions, each of which are used to determine staff's preparedness and readiness. Once the survey has been completed, we then compile that information into a comprehensive report and use these findings to determine where the gaps in personal preparedness lie. And this has been a great way of getting important information out to the OR&R staff and determining where we can better inform people about the importance of preparedness. Of course, this is an internal survey, an anonymous survey, so I can't share the results with you here, but I can confirm it has been very helpful in determining our staff preparedness levels. So if you are thinking of doing a similar survey with your community, it would be very beneficial for everyone involved and can help you tailor any preparedness messaging to people as you see fit. Remember, the goal of disaster preparedness is to be a survivor and not a victim. And being prepared and ready is the best way to accomplish this. And thank you. That will do it for my presentation here today, and I will take any questions. I will stop sharing the screen so I can see everyone.
Emily, thank you so much. That was jam-packed with facts. Will we be able to share these slides with our community?
Absolutely. I can send them to you, Nancy.
Perfect. That is great. So if you have questions, you can type them in the chat. We have about 30 people, so I think we could even allow people to unmute and to ask their questions personally. But that survey sounds like a great idea because then people can see from those questions whether they're prepared, right? Is that correct?
Yes, so we've tailored a lot of our preparedness messaging in our department based off of the answers we get from that survey every year. So they do kind of change every year. I like to think it's because it's working and the issues of last year have resolve themselves, but new issues will always crop up. We're getting smarter about how to tailor that messaging. So I think it's a great way to kind of remind people to be prepared and then keep that preparedness level up and hopefully continuing to go up as well.
So what are the kinds of questions that are in that survey, Emily?
Absolutely. So it starts by asking people their region, which for you, if you were to do this in Georgetown, it would probably not start the same way, but it would be, are you aware of the hazards that you could be affected by? Do you understand how long it could take for people to come and kind of help you? Again, that 2-week readiness. How do you feel prepared, or how do you feel your level of preparedness is? And these are all asked a little bit better in the survey, but it's how is your level of preparedness? How do you feel it's compared to last year? And so on and so forth. And then what fun things have you found that help you with preparedness? I always find that's a really good question to include because people do have great ideas for preparedness. It's not a linear thing, and some people prepare differently than others. So I like to get that information from everyone.
Okay. So do folks online have any questions? Is there anybody who would like to unmute and ask a question?
Nancy, could I mention, one of the attendees shared the Saginaw County RAVE system. So Saginaw County Emergency Management Agency currently uses the system called RAVE to send out emergency notifications. And there's a web page that you can sign up for that for. And so you can access the web page from the Saginaw County Emergency Management Agency. And I'll just put a link to it in the chat if you'd like to check it out and sign up. It's really straightforward to sign up. The note in the chat mentioned that notifications like when 127 is closed due to flooding will be shared through this system, and it'll go right in a text to your phone. So easy for you to get messages about what's happening locally.
Yes, I have that on my phone. It's a great system. Yeah. So take advantage and sign up for that. Do people have other questions? Tyler, can they actually unmute themselves and speak?
They would need to raise their hand and we could elevate them, but I also think that folks could just unmute and speak as well.
Yeah, okay. So if you want to ask a question, please go ahead. There's my friend Sharon Trebona, who I know oftentimes is involved in emergencies. Any words of wisdom for us, Sharon?
Not at this time.
Did you learn anything new tonight?
I think that the stressing of having a plan is one of the biggest things. Having a plan, having a kit put together, especially for the winter time, was very, very helpful to remind people of.
A fully charged phone.
Oh, I hear
And-
Bob.
Well, that's he's saying a fully charged phone would certainly be helpful. Yeah, but I think having a plan and having an emergency kit, and people thinking about their pets, very good idea.
Okay. And again, these slides will be available so that you can look at those lists that Emily went through. Any, we don't think about tornadoes happening, but when I lived in New Hampshire in Newmarket, we had a tornado and it came right through the town and it did quite a bit of damage. It ripped the roof off the library and overturned some people's mobile homes and all sorts of things. So you can never tell. Any questions? You're very quiet tonight. Usually,
I have a question.
go ahead.
Nancy
ahead.
Stefano. I actually summer in at McMahon, so I'm not there now, but I spent a lot of time there. I was wondering if, oh gosh, what was it I was going to ask? Oh, well, this video, will it be sent around to everybody who was on the chat tonight? I mean, on the program tonight, this Zoom? Or do
Yes.
you have to ask for it?
No, it will be posted, Ansi. It will be posted. Ruth, do you want to speak about that? Or I see you just popped on your picture.
Oh, yeah, so it'll be posted on the town webpage. It will also
Oh.
be posted on the Kennebec Estuary Land Trust's page. And
Okay.
it looks like
And
Tyler
then-
might have more information about sharing as well.
And will it be able to be shared? I was just thinking of just
Yes.
sharing
Yeah.
it with McMahon.
Yes, yes. And
Okay.
KELT, the Kennebec Estuary Land Trust, is also one of the co-sponsors tonight. And Ruth Endrick, who is on, it works for KELT and is a member of our Conservation Commission. So yes, you can share this freely. Emily
Great.
is a civil servant. She's an employee of NOAA, so this will be available.
Okay, good, thank you.
Go ahead, Tyler.
And just one correction, it's actually going to be on the town YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@GeorgetownME. And from that page, it'll be very easy to share the link. So if anybody has any difficulty, just reach out to the town office. There's all kinds of other great videos on there, Conservation Commission events, select board meetings, and budget hearings and the like, but I digress.
Okay, thank you.
So that'll be available and you can, share this with others. Those emergency kits are really important to have, especially with your medications, etc. Anyone else have questions? Oh, I'm not seeing any here. I'm going up and down to see if people want to speak out. Anyone want to speak out and ask anything? Please don't be afraid. Mary McDonald, my friend Mary McDonald, any questions from you or Frank? No, Mary's not even go ahead, Mary. Want to say something? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, I'm not seeing anybody asking any questions. I think you nailed it with things that people might want to know. Ruth, do you have anything you want to ask?
Yeah, well, I'd be interested in asking folks who are attending tonight if there's any other information that the Conservation Commission could provide about either resources from building on things from this program, like maybe if we had some sort of event where people could build emergency kits together, or printouts of Emily's lists that we could share with residents in different ways, or have at public events. Any ideas that you have about ways that Georgetown or other local communities could help local residents be prepared?
Well, maybe we can just put out, there are some great resources too about making your emergency kit. And we could perhaps have some of those available for townspeople, maybe even at the town meeting or something like that. Yes, checklists are great, says Karen Taylor. Yep, and that ready.gov is an excellent website. So what we maybe could do, and I'm going to write this down, is we could get there are some checklists that are available, and ready.gov does have some, actually, I think, don't they, Emily? I'm pretty sure they do. So we could make those available to people in the town.
Yes, ready.gov has checklists for everything, all hazards that you could possibly think of, and then just basic checklists as well.
Yeah. Always good to have those. And even if you have a generator, I think sometimes we lull ourselves into complacency because we have a generator. But those generators have to have fuel after a while. And if we have roads that are flooded out, etc., it's sometimes difficult for propane trucks to get around or for us to get up and get fuel. And then we are in the same boat as somebody else who doesn't have a generator, because storms can really damage places for longer periods of time than we imagine.
Generators only last so long. You should always be prepared to be without it.
Any other questions? Okay. I'm not seeing anything. All right. Well, this has been a great talk, and thank you so much, Emily, for taking the time. I know you've had a busy day, and we really appreciate your taking this time. Ruth,
Thank you for having me.
Any final words from you from the Kelp perspective?
No, just, yeah, thank you for the presentation and thanks for facilitating, Nancy, and Tyler from the town for hosting the Zoom. And I really appreciate everyone who came tonight, and we'll figure out ways to share more resources as time goes on. So
Yeah.
have a great night.
Thank you so much. And also I will share some of the links in case we do have a FEMA disaster. It's nice to have that information that Emily was mentioning from Louisiana, even though that is sounds like, oh my goodness, it wouldn't apply. They've made it generalized so that it can apply if you have to apply for aid after a disaster. So, okay, well, whoops, there's thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you, and I hope if we don't see you beforehand, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Take care. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you so much.